Mr. Scudder, Happy New Year. Can you hear me, Matt? Oh, good. Glad you're here. I'd be really embarrassed if nobody else shows up.
Hey Dave, I hope you're well too, man.
Yeah, doing good.
I've got a lot of noise in the background, so I'm gonna have to keep this off.
Yeah, that's okay. We'll probably have attendees muted, and then when we get to questions, we'll unmute. So we're going to give folks a couple minutes. I know that we made some changes to the schedule, but as you join, feel free to drop in the chat window where you're from, and see if you're from anywhere from the central part to eastern part of the U.S. How much snow did you get? I know that we got a bunch here, and I had to shovel it all myself. We're going to give folks just a few more minutes. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Connecticut, 12 inches. Yeah, we got about that down here too. In New Jersey. It wasn't bad in the beginning because it was nice and light, but when the frozen rain and sleet came in, it wasn't so fun. So I'm going to hope I don't mispronounce this. Gafar, is that how you pronounce your name? Let us know where you're from. I see we just got we got Reginald's is joined. And Reginald, I think I remember your name from some previous webinars. So thanks for joining again. We're just asking where folks are from, if they're from the U.S., if they're anywhere from the central U.S. to eastern U.S., asking about how much snow we may have gotten, because I know Matthew told us they got about 12 inches in Connecticut. Here in New Jersey, I got about 12 inches. And and then what we're going to do here is maybe one more minute, and then we're going to kick off. And since we've got just a handful of folks, and Satish, I know you and I talked about when we moved it, it might impact attendees, but I want to be respectful of time. So I want to jump in and get going. Can somebody give me a thumbs up that you see my screen? Can you see the slides? Anyone? Thumbs up. Satish.
Everything is fine. Screen is on
Yes.
there.
Excellent. All right. Then let's jump in. So, one, thank you for joining. Again, I know we had this scheduled for last week, but some unfortunate conflict came up and we had to move it to this week. I'm going to talk just 1 or 2 minutes and share a little bit about who we as iLink are, kind of pay the bills, and then we're going to jump into the conversation today, which I'm really excited about. And I really would like to make it a conversation, especially with a group of this size. I think we can have some fun with that. So Satish, if it's okay with you, right here at the top, let's open mics, and folks, I'll ask you to stay muted on your side, and then if you got a question, raise a hand, and we'll do our best to kind of answer those questions. So first and foremost, we are iLink Digital. We are a group of sort of 4 segments across a number of BUs. We, as the Salesforce COE, work within our AI business solutions business unit. A little bit about us there on the right. Just imagine iLink is just a big company that's made up of a bunch of boutique firms, really across, AI, machine learning, RPA, automation, IoT. Our Salesforce Center of Excellence has been together. This group, primary group, has been together between 15 or 20 years. And we really just work to help organizations, from emerging biopharma startups all the way through enterprise organizations. Just quickly, this is just a segment of folks that we work with and have supported in the past. And I'm going to just kind of let's get going. I see we've got other folks who've joined. Thank you all for joining. And let's jump in. So, today, what I want to talk about, I want to talk about, listen, what this conversation is, and what this conversation isn't. So this is not a Salesforce demo. It's not a product pitch. It really is kind of a reality check from my point of view of where life sciences and healthcare actually are today. You've probably been hearing since life sciences cloud, rebirth from Dreamforce. You've probably been hearing a lot about patient first. And I've been in this space a very long time. I know others on this call have been in this space a very long time, and we've heard this before. But I think we're at a pivotal point, and I'm excited about it. This idea, though, of putting the patient first now has to move to what I'm calling this operational reality, or operationality. I think the science is ready. I think the technology is advancing. The system, if we look at what I call from compound to cure, the system is kind of what's holding us back, and our ability to move information through the system is what I'm going to talk a lot about today, and I'm really going to focus on the patient. We will talk about providers. We will talk about life sciences and commercial teams, but I really want to focus on the patient, and kind of get into what I think are those most important elements we need to be thinking and talking about. So kind of the overall agenda here, I've broken slides into kind of 4 segments. One, we're going to talk first about what I've seen and heard from others are kind of the pressures in the healthcare space, the shift to this patient first operations element, understanding the impact of critical information flow on care delivery, We're going to talk a little bit about life sciences cloud and Agentforce readiness. But again, we are not going to dive too deeply into capabilities here. We're going to just talk about where this fits and how this enables industry in this idea of that patient first, patient-centered care. And then I'm going to share some things that I've been thinking about a lot about where we could go with this as a what the future might look like, in my opinion. And so again, as we have questions, feel free to raise your hand or drop it in the chat. Part of our team, we're monitoring that. And I really would like this to be super interactive. So, I think, well, a couple thoughts. One, I think that this pressure that's going on in the space now in healthcare and life sciences, I think it's real. I think that it's coming together, it's converging. Now, if we look at any of the things on the screen, and those who have seen or participated in one of our sessions like this know I really don't read the screen. I want you to have the opportunity to read it and to interpret it the way that you're seeing it. So none of these pressures, in my opinion, are real or new. I mean, not real, are new. I apologize. I think what's new about this is they're all sort of coming together at the same time. And so I do think, yes, science is sort of moving faster than operating models. I do think that patients just expect more. I think they expect clarity. I think they expect access, and I'll take that even one step further. And I'll put it this way. Patients are going to become more of a part of their own care. I know for myself and for a fact that, I've gotten blood test results back and I absolutely go put them in any one of the number of AI models I use and say, hey, this number is this bad. And I would say that probably a lot of you have done that. And I think what happens is there's two risks there, right? One is that the information I'm getting, I don't understand it in context, and that the information I receiving back scares me. But I do think at some point this is going to become something that, as a patient, I will be back to my care team and say, hey, I've looked at these things. Are these things real? And I become more of that conversation. I also think that, the more we move into this, very regulated space with technology like AI, and yes, we're going to talk about that a bunch. We're going to look for or see the challenges with regulation, and regulating all of this information is going to be a challenge. So thoughts, questions? Does anybody see a challenge in this space that I haven't called out here? Okay, I'll just continue to move forward. Oops. So this idea of patient first, which we will, again, you're gonna be so tired of that phrase by the end of this call. So the idea actually doesn't matter unless we change how we do the work. It can't just be, it can't just be a marketing slide in a deck, and it can't just be some value statement, because if it is, then nothing changes. But if we really look at it and understand how we need to change the operating model, then everything will change. And we're gonna get into this and look at kind of what I think we've all experienced and is happening today, and what it really needs to look like. So um, I want to be able, let's talk about anything here on this slide, because there's a lot of content, but I think it all makes sense. Again, if you have thoughts or questions, feel free, drop them in the chat. So my interpretation of what we see today, and I want to be really clear about something. You know, you look at the subheader here. Care isn't breaking because the people don't care. I absolutely have a number of friends who work in the healthcare industry, who work in the hospital that I live near, that's a few blocks away. And providers care. They really care. The challenge is that care breaks when the information doesn't get where it needs to go, can't be trusted necessarily, and is just not think about when you visit the doctor. Right. So I walk into the doctor and I'm sitting there, I'm waiting. Maybe the doctor said, "Hey, we got some results. Come on in and we'll talk about it." So my anxiety now is going through the roof. I have to go from person to person. I have to retell my story of why I'm there. I'm hearing different things from different people. And all of those things lead to confusion in care. So as we think, there are things that we miss, right? In the beginning, we may miss critical sort of early signals that don't get to the right people further down this care journey. Maybe we don't engage the right specialists because we don't have all those early signals. And where I got this visual of the chains breaking, a lot of times it's because that data is in disparate systems, and maybe the information that's flowing is not the pertinent information, or all of the pertinent information may not have been collected. It may just not be seen as value in this part of the chain. As we continue to move through, then as we have those patient conversations, if we don't have all of the right content from the early signals and the right pass through of the relevant data, that patient conversation is going to become even more frustrating. And I know that we look at healthcare as a practice. I think that what I'm speaking about at a higher level is where we are moving is that it's going to become less of a practice. It is going to become more of an information focused approach. We try to do that today, but we've got all these breaks in that part of the journey. And then ultimately, another thing that I'll talk about a little later in where I think we're going to go. Ultimately, there is so much information that comes from this patient journey chain that we don't do well enough, good enough capturing that data and being able to feed it back to the right folks as health outcomes content. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. So what I think this looks like, the real kind of patient journey and dare I say, kind of the holy grail of healthcare, right? It's a single journey. It is not broken change. It is not I hand off. It is when I'm handing off, we're in the same place. I'm seeing all of the content, all of the relevant information that needs to flow, right? There's no breaks in this, right? And that's intentional. We we have the ability to segment the information that needs to be segmented, but that all needs to be as part of the same journey. You know, and and if we don't follow this kind of trail, because it is not always a straight line, you know, one of the biggest things that breaks is trust, right? Do I, as a patient, trust what my provider is saying? As a provider, am I trusting what the drug or med device manufacturer is saying? And really that it becomes a larger challenge, systemic challenge, as I noted in the very beginning, right? The system is what needs to change here. But I want to take us from kind of this 10,000-foot level, you know, down to how it impacts us sort of day to day, and we're going to talk about that as we start to talk about more about life sciences cloud itself. You know, I think that, you know, we get these cleaner, better outcomes, but it really only comes from what we talked about earlier, getting the right information in that flow where everybody is working against the same pieces of information, not a piece from here and a piece from there. Oh, we forgot a piece from over there, or yeah, we have that information, but it's on this platform over here that's not connected to any of this, but it's really important data. So let's take this a step further as we start to come down again. One more step. We're saying, hey, this is the journey that we're really driving towards today, and we've been driving towards it for a long time. But I do think that we now have an opportune time to actually be able to create this as the operating model. I want to come down a little bit further. And again, if we have questions, please raise your hands, because I don't like to listen to myself talk so much. So if we continue sort of down, you know, I think this is where a lot of organizations go wrong. They still split the room. If you can think about it that way. I'm trying to think about a patient. I go from this room, I go to that room, and go to that room, right? So, you know, if I think of the providers here, if I think about the patients, if I think about those life sciences commercial teams, the value that we can get if everybody is on the same journey is really incredible. And you know, I talked about information coming out of that patient journey, right? Stronger health outcomes information, stronger health outcomes and cost, right? And the idea that if we can feed this data that comes out of this journey back into sort of the top of the funnel, for lack of a better word, we feed it back into the top of the funnel. We're not starting over again. Even, you know, imagine a drug is going through trials, and at some point it fails in trials. You don't have to go back and start over again. That information should still be fed back into the top of the funnel, so you don't start from scratch. So it's the same thing here. Maybe a medication or some sort of treatment that we're using on one patient, the outcome of that information, if we feed it back into the top of that funnel, could help the next patient. And so today, I think that this journey and the understanding of what happens and what that value and experience is for the folks that live this kind of every day, is I can't even think about the right word. I think it is evolutionary. If we, you know, make this whole journey the right, supported by the right operating model, I'll say it that way. So, you know, I think when the journey stays intact like this, then everybody will get the value. So I want to bring us down now into Life Sciences Cloud. And when I talk about Life Sciences Cloud, I want to talk about it as an orchestration layer. So I'll talk about a little bit of the capabilities here. But today, I think in a lot of organizations, we will see, a line between clinical and commercial here, or we'll see a line obviously between medical and patient services. But that line may go to other places before it gets to patient services. And so here I'm saying the same thing. Let's put it someplace else before it goes to patient services. Let's bring it into this engagement layer to make sure that all of the information that's coming together gets us to the right place within that care journey. Now, a couple things. One, I am not even beginning to suggest that Life Sciences Cloud is a care system. It is not a care system. It doesn't replace, EMR, EHR. It doesn't replace CTMS. It doesn't replace delivery platforms. It's not. It's an orchestration layer, and that the layer connects all of these elements so that we have the data that we need and the information that we need to move that patient's care more cleanly, more steadily, with more trust from the patient and the provider through whatever they're experiencing at that time. So it really is about orchestration. It's not about ownership. You think about sort of, and sorry, I'll look from time to time over to my screen where I can see it. You can look at clinical, right? We're talking, trials, evidence, safety information. That's just a few. We all know that behind each of these, simple boxes on a screen, there is a ton of information, right? There's medical, there's compliance stuff, right? Med affairs. It touches commercial as it comes through, the system. All of these things will all come together, and these are all things that are now live capabilities in Life Sciences Cloud. And I think, the power of all of this, as I kind of look at this screen in its simplicity, it's not any one feature, it's not any one element. It's that it's got shared context, governed workflows, and compliance is kind of built in by design. And so again, I'm not trying to make this sound like a sales pitch for Life Sciences Cloud, but I'm excited that it's here now in the way that it's come together, and I think we're going to see other great things that will ultimately help a person. So I want to take us kind of look at this a little more carefully. So yes, we all talk about AI and Agentforce. And we all know it. We're in the middle of it. It's happening. It's going to happen with or without you, whether it's Agentforce or not. So we all know that, and if we don't recognize that, we have to accept that. Agentforce is absolutely a very powerful tool. We've seen in the marketplace and heard that it's not necessarily where everybody was expecting it to be by now. Actually, let me clarify that. It's not anywhere near where people expected it to be by now. It is very strong in certain industries, and it is still maturing in others. And I think that the simplicity of what I want to share here is that Agentforce can only be as successful a value driver as an organization's maturity is. So I would say, and I actually was on with with Accenture yesterday. I was in a meeting about 2 weeks ago with a group of customers and partners like iLink, talking about Salesforce, talking about where we're experiencing what we're seeing about Agentforce in the marketplace. And the reality is that there are a lot of organizations still in kind of pilot mode trying to prove the value. And there are a few really in production. A lot of larger enterprise organizations, with the help of Salesforce, have Agentforce successfully implemented in production. The reason I wanted to talk about Agentforce in this way is because the difference in, as I've laid it out on this slide, is that yes, the pilot is, let's figure out how Agentforce can enable us and support us. You know, we have to make sure that as part of that, we are staying within the guardrails that we need to stay within, especially in healthcare and life sciences, any regulated space. I think it's critically important that we do that. And then I think the last piece here, where it, you know, there's this kind of trusted partnership between the technology and a person or people. That's why I'm calling it trusted operations at the end. I'm not trusting the technology because the operation goes across many technologies. So yes, I have to trust the technology at their own level, but it's really trusted operationally. And I think the other important piece here is that this is always, always, always human engaged. The human at the end of the day has the accountability. This is not, we're just going to expect that Agentforce or AI are going to just do all these elements that are under heavy regulation. And that's why I think that this success today is very narrow scoped. I think it will continue to kind of grow and get better. It will absolutely be human in the loop. And as we advance more and understand more about AI as a collective group of people, then I think that will help us start to drive to those trusted operations. Now, I am going to stop. And I mean, I might have to start calling on people. No, I'm just kidding. Please tell me I'm nuts. You know, ask questions about, hey, well, wait a minute. You talked about this. You know, have you thought about that? Let's see if we can truly make this a little bit more interactive. And so I'm just going to be quiet. And if you're uncomfortable with silence, maybe we can talk. Well,
Hey, Dave, this is Matthew. Oh,
hey, Matthew.
hey, by the way, good presentation. I just wanted to ask, maybe as a thought, and I'm trying to walk away because I was really near a lot of noise. I apologize.
No worries. No worries.
So hopefully you can. So
yes,
I would love to hear, now that the commercial engagement part of Life Sciences Cloud is just recently released because of the Veeva agreement.
yes.
What are you seeing in terms of adoption from your vantage point of the, you know, kind of the early testing of commercial engagement? We've all, you know, seen World Tour and Dreamforce. I know you were there.
Yep.
Love to get your perspective on what you think the adoption rate is now in terms of the commercial engagement side. And have you been able to really test it? Have you been able to get it up and running in a trial org? Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Matthew. That's a really good question. And I I promise to anyone else on this call, Matthew and I do know each other. We've been in this space together for a long time, and I promise this was not a setup question. But Matt, I actually know the elements very well. Um, I was at IQVIA prior to coming to iLink, and we had the customer engagement tool. It was called Orchestrated Customer Engagement. I was responsible for customer success over those customers that used OCE. So I understand the capabilities of that tool. And as Salesforce brought that tool into Life Sciences Cloud, I thought first of all, it was a really great decision. Maybe not so for me as my team was no longer necessary, but I think it was the right decision for Salesforce, for providers, for patients. I have not. I don't know if I could say. I don't know that I have a number around adoption. I know the simplicity of the tool. It is different. It is definitely different than Viva. So if there are folks that were using Viva and were using, Health Cloud, or other elements of Salesforce, and now they're starting to peel those tools away within their organization. Viva is much more detail oriented. I would say it's definitely a step deeper into industry, and the OCE tool or the customer engagement tool, it is just one level up and it's broader. So I think there's a differentiation between those two there. I haven't really heard or seen any sort of adoption numbers. We do have a couple of very large customers that are moving fully onto Life Sciences Cloud and off of Viva. As you might imagine, I can't talk about it, in this space, but the customer engagement element was a big part of the reason they made that decision. And I know that we've been helping them in a couple of those areas, and everything that we've been working on with them thus far has been successful in getting it out to their users. I know that's sort of a kind of walk around some holes in the road kind of answer, but I hope that it helps. That help at all?
Yeah, that's great. I'm also very familiar with OCE, and it's a very, very different application than what
Yes.
OCE was. So, anyway, no, that's great. Thank you, David.
No, thank you. All right, any other questions? All right, so I want to stay where we are for a minute, right? We talked about how and where Health Cloud lives to help that patient journey. We talked about here where Agentforce is, the role that it should play, and really, really importantly, how it is, that humans are working with the tool. The tool is not working. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. The tool is working for the human isn't working for the tool. So there are a couple of things, and I've said this in some of our past discussions, that I want to bring out because I do think it's important here. There are some foundational elements here, and there's far too much for me to cover off on. But I think what I want to come out of this slide with you understanding is, it's not just about buying more tech. It is about understanding what really a successful technical org looks like. It is about understanding that if I have tech debt, and Matthew mentioned Dreamforce. One of the main one of the main conversation points coming even from Salesforce and coming from some of the very large implementation organizations partners was you got to clean up tech debt. Because if you don't clean up tech debt, if you don't bring your platform into parity with where it needs to be, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle with being successful with Agentforce, right? Because I mentioned earlier, like AI is not going to fix these things. It's just going to bring them out. So if you've got a good maturity level, AI will bring that out and show more success. If you're not so mature and you're not, kind of looking at your technology, well, it'll bring that out too. So just kind of a reminder. The other reminder is if there are any leaders on the call with us today, I want to talk about this. Um, I have been talking about this for, gosh, 9 months, a year, and I will keep talking about it because I think there are still some that don't understand this element. So we all look at this and say, wow, we can do great stuff with technology, with AI, with Agentforce, right? We can see these efficiency gains. Um, I was just reading something literally yesterday where folks were talking about all the efficiency gains they're going to get with AI. And in those circumstances, they're taking certain tiers out of their organizations because they can leverage AI to support folks that are in other roles, and that tier doesn't become necessary. But one of the things that they were discussing yesterday was, yep, but that tier becomes the next generation of leader. And if you can't bring those folks in and you can't have them learn within their role, you're not going to have a pipeline of folks in your organization to keep your organization successful. And I think someone used the analogy of an airline. They said, well, listen, if you're going to use AI to do the things that a co-pilot would do, as your pilots retire, who's going to come into that space? And so the idea that leadership is looking at is sort of one vision, and the idea that as an employee I look at or you look at is, hey, okay, but what does this mean for me? And I still think, especially if you're on LinkedIn, if you see any news around this, people are still talking about, how this is going to take away their jobs. I've got a good friend who is an executive level uh, marketing individual who continues to fear AI as I try to help them understand, leverage the technology to continue to allow yourself to focus more on the creative side and not just kind of on the day-to-day noise. But so these to me are two things that we really want to think about. Um, so I want to just keep an eye on time. I think we're okay. So uh, I want to talk about kind of coming out of this. Where can partners help? And really, how do partners, what do they need to understand to help in the healthcare and life sciences space? So I think kind of the most important first piece is, as a partner, you know, we are responsible to kind of put together you know, a truly guided phased, execution. I know that that's what we do when we do implementations. I know that we have, project plans that should tie back to the goals and outcomes of the project, which we hope tie back to the goals and outcomes of the organization. But I think we've got to really establish the clear operating model um, around organizationally and not, again, people organizationally, but an organization of the system, so that we drive this through the first time, and we're gonna minimize kind of that rework that we all just love so much. I think that the other thing is that not only do we build that operating model, we do really focus on clear, phased execution based on that system organizational maturity, um, of the customer, and we help bring them up in that operating maturity level. And then I do think that if we do this right, we can start to help customers, and our customers' customers, see the value and start to trust how the technology can enable them. And so I think really at the end of the day, like we're not, as a partner, iLink as a partner, we don't install those patient first strategies. We help organizations enable them, and start to build out that maturity. So what I want to kind of go through next is I've thought a lot about this, and Matthew, I know I might call you. I don't know if there are other folks that that have been, how long they've been in this space, but I've put together some thoughts around kind of what's next. And the way that I'm looking at this is, everybody talks about this, this digital evolution, this digital revolution. I don't think that the biggest shift ahead, right? Right now, we're just trying to get a line from the broken chains to a single journey. But once we do that, I think we'll have the foundation for this idea that the biggest shift is not digital, it's relational. And I'll let that sink in. I think that on the care journeys, we're going to move forward from, episodic care, from just hey, I'm there, oh, I did this, oh, I don't feel well here, whether it's, visits, whether it's treatments, it doesn't matter. Whether it's, clinical trials. This is across the whole span of that kind of compounded cure. It's going to be a continuous journey, and that it's going to bring context forward, not just data. It will bring context forward, right? And so we all know this. It's been every single organization. I don't care about the industry. For decades, we have been trying to kind of solve we're going to move this data from here to there. We're going to create these data lakes and that data lakes, and that idea of centralizing all that data, and I think everybody recognizes that it is a very cumbersome. It takes a very long time to figure out where data is, to figure out how to pull it together. We know larger organizations are undertaking that. We know, smaller emerging organizations are not just taking that on, but they are trying to build their own operating models where they don't end up in that place. But I think that this is kind of breaking kind of under its all under its own weight. And I think the future isn't about moving data. I think the future is about moving decisions. It is keeping the data where it is and moving the actions that need to occur through the process, not the data that needs to occur through the process. And I know people will start to think, well, wait a minute, you're telling me that we want these technical processes to give the answer to the doctor instead of providing the information to the doctor to let him make that answer. And I'm going to say that in some respect that yes, and I think we're seeing it today, even with the way that when we do CAT scans today, and we know that a lot of imaging is sent from the location it was done to another location, and it's assessed. And I know that organizations are now building and training large language models to look at tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of health imaging pieces to try to look like and understand what does that model supposed to look like, and then where there are anomalies. I know that they're looking at not only where there are anomalies, but then understanding the demographic they're looking at, and understanding how people are people and different around the world, or even just different in their own town. So I know our technology is doing that to be able to at least provide as much of the decision, as much context um, with provenance, right, with the right amount of guidance around it. And now the data stays where it is, and the decisions are made along the way, and that information can come back to the people who need to look at it. And so I think that's the future. I think that the technology, um, we have swung from enterprise tools back to a lot of kind of point solutions. I think we're going to see much more kind of this ecosystem driven operation, um, where the tools are still isolated. And when I say tools, I can even be speaking about robotics that are giving telemetry, pardon me. Um, and so I think these are just some of the things that I see where we're going to be going. So it is really going to be about the patient experience, the patient education, and it is going to go from what it is today, where everybody hates sitting in the doctor's waiting room, and you're lucky if you can get 12 minutes of the doctor's time. And the doctor is lucky if he can get 12 minutes of his time to understand why you're there, and some history. And I think that just goes up and down this patient journey chain. So these are just some things that I'm thinking about. The other piece is really what I mentioned earlier, this idea that all of the data that flows from this is all synthesized and put back into the top of the funnel. But I think I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. So I'm just going to go to kind of, here's what I think that if we, when you walk away from this, the things that I really want you to think about and understand, at least from my point of view, right? So we've already said this a zillion times on the call. Patient first cannot just be, a marketing slogan. It has to now be operationalized. Number one, I think that we need to remember that Life Sciences Cloud is the sort of operationalized or that orchestrator. It is not going to replace the systems that exist today, and shouldn't, frankly. I think any of us who've worked around Salesforce for a long time will say you have to know what belongs in Salesforce and what doesn't. And so I think this is a good example of that. I think that trust, and again, trust is just such a good marketing term that Salesforce uses as one of their pillars. But I do believe that the trust needs to come from the provider. It needs to come from the patient. And to do that, we as partners, organizations that are leveraging technology, they just have to remember that if they start on a good foundation, then that trust will be gained on the technology. And if they don't, that trust will be shaken. I think that this idea that where we are heading today is to a human transformation enabled by technology. So yes, we're leveraging AI and Agentforce, and it's great, but we've got to maintain human oversight, because we've got the knowledge and experience that even if we train an LLM, we have to understand what we've seen in the real world, quite frankly. And I think what's important, and again, I'm going to say this in a shameless plug, as partners, we've got to up our game, and we've got to be able to work and support our customers to not just use these phrases as marketing fodder, but to really bring it to the table when we work with customers. So I know I've run us kind of long, and questions, thoughts. Come on, someone has to have a question. Thanks, Con. Reginald, you still with us out there? You always ask questions. We may have lost Reginald. Well, listen, for those of you who are still here, thank you for attending. I hope this was of some value to you, and we'll make sure that we'll get a version of this presentation out to you all. I hope you have a great rest of your day, whether it is morning, afternoon, or evening. Thanks again. And Satish, as always, thank you for all your help.
Yeah, thanks, David. We can send a follow-up. Thanks, Steve.